Hey, it's Matt Sager, and Variety's Actors on Actors video series continues to be a fascinating, really interesting, very entertaining, and deeply enlightening series of videos. These are these videos in which actors are paired with one another and have these conversations. I actually did a podcast episode the other day based on an Actors on Actors video featuring Henry Cavill and Patrick Stewart. Since then, I've seen a lot of great ones, including just yesterday, Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway. A few days ago, Chris Evans and Paul Rudd. And the day before yesterday, a deeply enlightening, deeply thought-provoking Actors on Actors video with Daveed Diggs, the lead in the current Snowpiercer series, and Anthony Mackie, a great actor from, for instance, movies like All the Way. But people listening to this podcast are probably most familiar with him from his role as the Falcon, starting in The Winter Soldier and continuing in the Marvel Universe, extending on to the Falcon and Winter Soldier series coming soon to Disney+. Other sci-fi fans might know him from the very odd but quite good episode of Black Mirror he did, Striking Vipers. But really, above all, he's an artist, he's an actor, he's a person of color at a critical time for all of these things, particularly conversations being had about race on a level that they've never been had before. People are refusing to stay silent. I think that's unbelievably important. People are always saying it's not the right time. People are forever saying, well, let's fight your battles here and that. No, it's time. It's past time. Everybody's got a responsibility. Some of it feel it more strongly than others. Others have more of a platform than others. Anthony Mackie is taking both the responsibility and the stage he has on which to speak and making some excellent salient points about diversity in the industry, both as a whole, and he doesn't pull his punches. He addresses the diversity problem in the Marvel Universe, both on and off screen. This is a fairly obvious statement. One that is a long time coming. I love Marvel. I love Disney. Obviously, I love these movies and franchises. But yeah, diversity is a serious issue in what is now the biggest money-making machine in Hollywood. Anthony Mackie made the very simple yet headline-making remark that he's, quote, really bothered by the MCU's lack of representation. First of all, he has a lot of positive things to say as well. He talks a lot about the upcoming Falcon and Winter Soldier series coming to Disney+, says it's a lot less like a series and more like a 6 to 8 hour movie, which sounds absolutely frickin' phenomenal. But Daveed Diggs asked Mackie how he was responding to what he called this current moment. This moment, of course, being a moment of awakening, of people speaking up in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. Just the latest in what has been a pattern that, honestly, when can something that never ended claim to have been started? The systematic murder of people of color, often by law enforcement and other forms of institutionalized racism, it started when America started. People's realization of it, people unifying around it, people speaking of it fearlessly, that all is a little bit new. But yeah, it's a moment we're having, albeit one long in the making. It's a reckoning. But regarding this moment, Mackie had this to say about the MCU, quote, when the Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out, I'm the lead. When Snowpiercer came out, he says to Daveed, you're the lead. We have the power and the ability to ask those questions. It really bothered me that I've done 7 Marvel movies where every producer, every director, every stunt person, every costume designer, every PA, every single person has been white. People talk about forced diversity on the movie screen, which is bullshit. But the argument is, oh, well, Spider-Man can't be black because he's always been white. Oh, why are we paying so much attention to the Black Panther when he's ever only been a tangential character, which is not true? It's a straw man bogus argument, but when we're talking about behind the scenes, craft services, PAs, producers, directors, then we're talking about what is just clearly institutionalized racism. We see it in every industry. We see it on different levels. We shouldn't be seeing it this much in the entertainment industry. Certainly not in Disney, certainly not in Marvel. That's a problem. I'm glad that Mackie's brought this to light because I didn't know this. One tends to assume the worst, but to have it called out specifically like this is important. It's a public service Mackie's doing, and he's doing his part for this movement. He then really hits Marvel, talking about Black Panther, which is the only Marvel movie that had a black director and a black producer. That's shocking. We're now talking about 23 of the most lucrative, most wildly creative movies of all time. Movies that span everywhere from the New York streets to outer space, running the gamut from cosmic powers to magic powers. And that's the level of representation we've got behind the scenes. I would describe that as unacceptable. Mackie says, quote, "We've had one black producer. His name was Nate Moore. He produced Black Panther. But when you do Black Panther, you have a black director, black producer, a black costume designer, a black stunt choreographer." And I'm like, that's more racist than anything else. Because if you can only hire the black people for the black movie, are you saying they're not good enough when you have a mostly white cast? That's the end of the quote. And it's a fairly salient and kind of alarming question. Mackie then says, "My big push with Marvel is hire the best person for the job. Even if it means we're going to get the 2 best women, we're going to get the 2 best men. Fine. I'm cool with those numbers for the next 10 years because it starts to build a new generation of people who can put something on their resume to get them other jobs. If we've got to divvy it out as a percentage, divvy it out. That's something as leading men that we can go in and push for." That's all really true. It's all really important. So I will link to the video. As I said, like all these Actors on Actors videos, it's great. It's insightful. It's about at the 16-minute mark of the video that you start to see Mackie talk about this stuff. And it's far from being all negative about Marvel. He's simply making a lot of important points at a time when they really need to be made. But he's very excited about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Again, he says it's going to look like a Marvel movie despite being 6 to 8 hours. He says, quote, "We're shooting it exactly like a movie." Everybody who had worked on a TV show before was like, "I've never worked on a show like this. It feels exactly like we were shooting the movie cut up into the show. So instead of a 2-hour movie, a 6 to 8 hour movie." That's amazing. As excited as I was for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that just makes it sound unbelievably cool. Snowpiercer, by the way, I hope you're watching it. It was a great comic. It was a great movie. It is now a great series. And Daveed Diggs is a spectacular lead. So 2 great actors from 2 great franchises and shows talking about their art, the way in which they approach it, and talking about some very serious, important stuff going on in the world right now. And, look, this is technically an entertainment podcast. They are entertainers. We hear it all the time. Shut up and be entertaining. And there's a time when you can't do that. There's certainly a point in which you can say, "Hey, listen, I'm a human being. I have the right to opine about anything, anytime." Being an entertainer doesn't mean I'm not allowed freedom of expression to talk about things in the real world. Far from it. We hear right-wing entertainers talking about politics all the time. Scott Baio, I don't know what he's done since Charles in Charge other than opine about Trump. Kevin Sorbo, I don't know what happened to him after Hercules other than he made a bunch of movies about how hard it is to be a right-wing Christian. So yeah, entertainers have opinions. Of course they do. And even I, as a podcaster, I like to talk about the arts because the real world is very serious. But when things are very important to me, I like to talk about them too. I don't want to get too hardcore because, I was reading the news this morning and Dr. Fauci predicts that very soon we could have up to 100,000 new cases of coronavirus in the U.S. every day. That's a little bit beyond my wheelhouse. That's too depressing for me. I do at a certain point want to go back to my comics and my comic movies and my Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. But I am not going to turn my back on this moment. Nobody should. Anthony Mackie isn't, and that's awesome. I'm frankly very disheartened by what he has to say about stuff going on behind the scenes at Marvel, but very hopeful that his speaking up on it will change that. So do check out that video. And of course, I can't wait for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I imagine that after you watch this video, you'll be even more excited too. Please feel free to leave comments about this or anything else. If you're checking this out on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Or if you're listening on a podcast app, please subscribe there and leave me reviews. Also, I'd love it if you followed me on social media. There are links in this episode's description as to how you can do that and as to how you can support this podcast. Thanks, and I'll talk with you soon.